Welcome to Rush the Field. Redoing this. I was actually just live for about 60 minutes there until I realized that I was on the wrong microphone. And because I tend to use this as ability to cut this down into short form content, it was on my Mac uh, microphone, which sounds really rough. I should sound much clearer now. And with that being said, and yes, I'm having a really bad hair day. We're going hoodie mode um, for this show. We're going full hoodie mode because I'm going to sound like a jerk for a good chunk of this episode because we're going to be talking about the 80s and 90s. Let's also fix the camera. This is all just trials and tribulations of getting this show to the point I want it to be. Get this a little less bright. There we go. It's a beautiful Sunday. Hope everyone is watching this. If you're watching this from nighttime, morning time, lunchtime, hope you are having a fantastic day. We have a very packed show. First, I want to say below you could see right here is the Rush the Field email. Feel free to drop any questions, and I will segment time out into the show once we get some questions following through. Follow the follow the socials, because apparently I am off to a fantastic start, but it's all about getting to that 30th episode. And I do plan on actually getting a green screen relatively soon. I want to get this background fixed. We may actually move, not apartments, but we may move actual desk to a different side. So you may see a new background. I want to try to get more of a wall versus just everything you see back here. But with that being said, let's go ahead and dive into the first topic because I'm sure it's going to be filled with people agreeing. And I made a TikTok talking about the 80s and 90s of the NFL, primarily targeted towards the 80s, but it was received with great feedback. People always agreeing with me, and no disagreements whatsoever. It was honestly just no toxicity whatsoever. Let's first get an understanding of what we done with the 80s and 90s movement. Let's make it very clear. There's also a lot of jokes and memes behind it. It's not filled with truth, but I think the logic can be expanded into a conversation of talking about what's the best players of all time versus the greatest players of all time, which is a conversation that I understand to some people may feel as common sense, but the first mistake, if you're talking about sports debates or sports topics or talking with fans, is you can't make assumptions with everyone. Just because you and another person agree with the take, you can't assume that the masses agree with that take, because that's going to be the flaw number one. And what I've seen from people is saying you can't really do the comparison of basketball to football because it's a different sport. And I still think there is some truth to what I am saying. I get the pushback, and I'll address some of it as well. Let's first understand the whole movement that's happened with basketball. It's rooted with the Jordan LeBron debate, as these things mostly go, but as well, we have to acknowledge the fact that it could also be talking about what the skill gap and eras look like. A lot of people are focusing on the Jordan can't go left side of it. In that video, he was even talking about the defenses and what it looked like in basketball and the rules that were placed back then. And I'll talk about the rules in football as well. But the rules back then is you had a one-on-one offense, not completely, because obviously the triangle isn't one-on-one, just for example. But like for defenses, you had to hold on to the man that you were assigned to, or you had to hard double the ball handler. There was no in between, or it was illegal defense. And then when we talk about football, there was no illegal contact. You could obviously lean with your head. It was a lot more physical of a sport. I'm not denying that. I'm not denying the fact that back then football was much more physical. But then you have a crowd of people that say it was much more physical. It was real football. That's how it should be played. Does that not sound familiar to how people talk about basketball back then with the 80s and 90s? Is it not? Like, and then just to be fair, because I don't want to be someone that just stares at Football Reference or Basketball Reference, like how people were going back and watching games, I went back because it's available on YouTube to go credit what my takes were. Like, I was inferring through data and watching numbers and reading about it, but nothing beats watching actual football games. And I understand I can't watch every single game of every single season, but for example, just for the baseline of understanding, watched 1988 Monday Night Football, Broncos versus Raiders. I typed in 1988 Monday Night Football. That was the first game that popped up. And it was a game in which the Broncos had a 24-0 lead, which ended up losing the game. And John Elway, someone that is seen as just this elite level quarterback, generational prospect, seen as this lock top 10 guy of all time. I don't know. I'm starting to look at John Elway a little fraudulent. People may not like that. He's the second best Broncos quarterback of all time. I'm not saying he's not a great player because he's had great feats, even though his MVP should have gone to Jerry Rice, even though his Super Bowl runs were very predicated on Terrell Davis, even though there was moments where I feel that he got a little bit too much grace, even though there's moments where he looks like Sam Howell throwing the ball like he was in that Monday Night Football game. I wasn't kidding. Like, he threw 4 picks. He was the reason why the Raiders were coming back. By the way, a Raiders team that I believe ended 7-8 or 7-9. And the Broncos were also really mid. So it's not like this Raiders team was elite level. Like, their quarterback was, I think, 2 for 10 going into the third quarter, which, by the way, I understand. It was a run-first league. Not denying that the guy should have been throwing the ball for 20 times, but, like, a little bit better than that. And John Elway, I think he was, like, 6 for 8. He had 115 yards and 2 picks. One of them he could have had a touchdown if he didn't get tackled at the 1-yard line, so I'm not denying that. But John Elway was throwing them out of the game. And all I saw was a dude that had a great arm. Not denying he had a great arm, but the dude would make boneheaded decisions and would throw his team out of games. And honestly, you cannot tell me that there is 10 quarterbacks that are greater than him, but I can definitely tell you 10 quarterbacks that are better. Josh Allen's better. Joe Burrow is better. Lamar Jackson's better. Obviously, don't even get me started with Patrick Mahomes. And you could even say Justin Herbert. Because the only argument that people are going to have is, well, what has Justin Herbert won? You're talking about greatness then. You're talking about the team around him. Because the truth is, wins aren't a quarterback stat. And it doesn't define who's the better player. Because outright, the growth and skills year over year, I think it's common knowledge, but to some people, they don't. Like, that's the thing. To me, I feel it's common knowledge, but I can't make the assumption that everyone agrees with me because then that's arrogant, that's dumb. I can just express my opinion and the reasons behind it, and either people can agree or disagree. That's what sports talk is all about. And to me, the growth and gap in skills is big enough between the 80s and 2020s. I would hope it is because we're damn near at 40 plus years. The 90s, I understand. You have guys like Barry Sanders. You have guys like Deion Sanders. There is anomalies in each era that I think would work out in today's league. But I think the floor and the gap in the average player is massive. And I think people overblow the fact that you could just hit harder. I get the trenches is, I think, the biggest thing of contention that I can understand is just different. But these corners weren't moving me. I saw a corner 25 yards off the ball and watched a wide receiver from the Raiders just run in a straight line, a streak, 20 plus yards and run a little out route outside the numbers, and that was getting clamped up because the guy was starting 25 yards off the ball. But I'm being told, well, you could hold guys at the line of scrimmage. There wasn't no illegal contact plays. Defenses were giving wide receivers 25 yards a gap. I'm sorry if you disagree with the fact that if you gave Brandon Ayuk 25 yards, he's not just eating every single time. Like, you can grab more average players in today's league and throw them back there, and they're going to eat. They're going to have 1,800 yards. They're going to go crazy. You could push back and say, oh, they wouldn't be able to handle the physicality. I don't think the guys back then would be able to handle the speed and athleticism. I saw someone try and tell me Micah Parsons would not be able to cook back then. It's the same logic with, I could easily throw LeBron back into the 80s and 90s, and he's going to average a 30-point triple-double, multiple defensive player of the years, multiple MVPs, and be the most dominant player we've ever seen because he is so far in skill. I always say I think Jordan might be the greatest player of all time, but I have LeBron as the most skilled, best player of all time. But people blur the lines and try to mesh the two, and then that's where the debates get really rocky. That's the whole point of this, is to get a clear understanding of the gap in skills between eras and understanding that even in 20 years, when we get to 2040, if we're still playing this sport, if we're still alive on this earth, they're going to be better than the guys that we're watching right now. I accept that fact. Some people don't. Some people are delulu and still think that you can grab guys from the 80s and drop them right now. Not saying that there is not anomalies to that. I could obviously see Barry Sanders. I could obviously see Deion Sanders. I can obviously see Dan Marino. But the list is really small. And the list grows year after year. Whatever the current timeline, 2024, each decade, the list grows on more guys that you can put into the modern era because you get closer in skills. It's a simple concept. I understand a lot of people say, oh, it's easy, duh, that's just common knowledge. Some people don't believe it. And I'm trying to communicate to those people that it's just that simple. And it's also just really funny to make people upset about disrespecting 80s and 90s because I'm having to listen to people say it was real football, and I watched the game and I was bored out of my mind. A 24-0 comeback was boring as all can be because you're watching either a wing T halfback dive, an end around, or John Elway scrambling around and trying to throw a pick, which, by the way, he had multiple opportunities because we don't have the statistics about it to prove it. He could have had 6 picks that game, and I'm not kidding. But because he threw the ball with such velocity, and I'm not kidding, the commentators were glazing the hell out of the fact that he threw a ball right at a linebacker so hard that the linebacker couldn't catch it. And they said, wow, the arm strength on that is incredible. There was a moment where he was scrambling around, not throwing the ball away. And the commentators are sitting there going, wow, John Elway is incredible, and then throws a pick to lose them the game. But people get mad when people get very happy when Mahomes is doing crazy things, which I don't care about. But I think the narrative around someone like John Elway is a little overblown. I'm not moved by it. Maybe I should just make a whole video talking about how not Mahomes, but John Elway is one of the most overrated players of all time. Just a thought. Let's move on, because I could sit here all day. Next topic, we have players I was wrong about. Obviously, I like talking about the NFL draft. We have a lot to talk about with college football as we get into the summertime. I'm waiting for we have spring football to come out. I'm trying to get as much information about anything going on with spring football. Very excited that we're already in spring game era. But let's talk about the draft, because once the draft is over, that's when the clock really starts, in my opinion. And we have some things like Fletcher Cox, Jason Kelce. We could talk about the Eagles and how I think the Eagles are on the verge, I think, of collapsing with Nick Sirianni. I feel like this team is closer to kind of falling apart. You take leadership like Fletcher Cox, Jason Kelsey out of the room. Not to say guys like Jalen Hurts won't be able to lead. A.J. Brown seems like a loose cannon right now. Nick Sirianni kind of seems like a cheerleader of a head coach. Obviously, you bring in the new coordinators, Kellen Moore, and it's supposed to fix things. But I start to wonder, obviously, when they add the collapse that they did, is it something that's just going to be able to be turned around in one offseason? And now you're losing more leadership, that's bad. Leadership in the locker room. You're losing more pass rushers. The corners aren't going to be fixed in a day because Slay is getting older. Bradbury's obviously gone. The linebacking room is bad. You lose Kevin Byard. I understand a lot of people assume it's going to just get fixed with the coordinators, but I don't know. Are the Eagles closer? Because we've seen it all the time after a Super Bowl. It's rarely that you get, like, obviously you have the Super Bowl hangover, but it's rare that you get the downfall immediately in 1 year. They still made the playoffs last year. They look dominant. But is it not a chance that, like, I think of the video essays of the downfall of this team, a team that got to the pinnacle, they got to the peak, the downfall. It's never just in 1 year. You start losing a couple guys more and more. Maybe those tendencies that Jalen Hurts had last season are exploited even more. Maybe the offensive line is not as good. Maybe they get an injury somewhere else and it really starts to crumble. Because do you really believe in Nick Sirianni? I think the people that were trying to get him fired kind of saw through the crystal ball that this thing could really fall off its wheels once these older players start to leave. I think it shouldn't be underestimated that Fletcher Cox was a big leader in that locker room. Now, can Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter take the reins? Obviously, they're more than talented to do so, even though Jordan Davis has been a little disappointing. But there's a lot of holes on this team, and A.J. Brown looks like he wants to get out. Dallas Goedert got injured, but he came back. I really start to think, what are the odds that a team like that turns around and really gets back to the peak of their powers in a loaded NFC versus continuously starting to crumble? It's like putting a blowtorch towards trying to think of a good analogy. I don't know. Like, I couldn't think. I'm not calling coward. Couldn't think of anything good there, but I'm really starting to get worried about the Eagles. I don't know what to expect from them. I know I went on a quick little side quest there, but let's get back on topic to what I was talking about. Guys I was wrong about in the NFL. Guys I was very high about coming out of college. Guys I was lower on coming out of college and proved me wrong. We'll talk about a list of players that I was thinking about that I just got outright wrong. I'll tell you whether I was very high on them, why I was, and it just didn't work out. And we could classify this. I've seen this on Instagram for Jeff on Sports. He does great NBA content. And he tweets out reasons why I wouldn't be a good GM. And I want to kind of pivot off of that for the NFL. Reasons why I wouldn't be a good GM. Number one, Trey Lance. I'm still a believer, but that's my delusion, making sure that I am still a believer. Is there a world where Trey Lance can have a Geno Smith career? Maybe. I mean, at least Geno played a little bit. I saw the path. I saw the light of this guy who is a super raw prospect sitting for a little bit and then getting that opportunity. And I'm just so sad that he got injured that year. Now, obviously, you get Brock Purdy that same season. And I'm sure Niners fans wish they didn't trade up and waste that pick. But I saw the vision. I thought he was a dark horse MVP candidate, and the copium that I was having after that Bears loss, everyone knows about that game because that's when the Justin Fields hype, I think, really started to build, was them running in that water. And I chalked it up to bad bad weather on why he played so poorly. And it just sounds like from reports the guy, like, it just has not clicked that he's that guy behind the scenes. And unlike Jordan Love, like, you don't see these crazy moments. It was always up and down. It was inconsistencies. And I want to see him get a real chance because honestly, it reminds me so much of the Markelle Fultz effect. And at least Markelle has built out a role in the NBA and started playing. But for the longest, it's just the mystery of what Trey Lance is because you just don't know. Because once Purdy came in, he had an opportunity to beat him in camp, and it was a red flag that he couldn't even beat guys like Sam Darnold. And maybe he was just defeated at that point because he went from being this number 3 overall pick to now can, like, barely be on the roster. And apparently, according to reports, ear to the ground in Dallas is he's like verge of getting cut in Dallas. He's not even their backup. I think it's still Cooper Rush. I don't know, man. I want Trey Lance to work out. I'm very curious if he's going to play in the preseason. Like, I want to see him live and in action, but I was very wrong. Another guy that I was wrong about, because we're going to make these multiple parts. Reasons why I would not be a good NFL GM. Isaiah Simmons. I thought he would work, and maybe he's carved out a pretty solid role with the Giants, but I thought he could have been so special. And I think if he was coming out in today's draft, I think people would play him more at safety in that nickel role or that slot corner role and see if he would work out. I think the Cardinals drafted him and really didn't know what to do with his talent. And maybe it's because when you're a jack of all trades and you're not elite in one aspect with football, but you're just good kind of everywhere. It's the same thing that I felt with Jabril Peppers, a guy that was just really good everywhere, but didn't really hone into one area. And the ceiling is so high, but then the floor is much lower than I think people anticipate. And good for Jabril because he has carved out and I think had his best year this year with the Patriots. But Isaiah Simmons, also who has had his best year with the Giants, just wasn't like, I thought this dude was so cool coming out of college for the fact that he could just play everywhere and he was an athletic freak of nature. His combine was legendary. Him and Madden, at the time, as someone that was a big Madden head, I was like, dude, this dude's going to be an awesome card to play with. And yeah, my bias was whooping me. But yeah, I was dead wrong about Isaiah Simmons. Reasons why I wouldn't be a good NFL GM. Jalen Hurts. I was not a believer. As someone that followed SEC football very closely and then watched him at Oklahoma, it was the area that was whooping me, and it was the immatureness of my draft analysis. Because every person that likes to follow the draft grows in maturity of what is their biases, why are they saying the things that they are. And to me, I was comparing and contrasting to other players in the Lincoln Riley system, and that was hindering my opinion. I was like, out of Kyler and Baker, Jalen Hurts was obviously the least progressed as a passer. He had great mobility when it came to running through people, but it wasn't this twitchy athlete. And I was just like outright not very high on the ceiling of what he could be. I thought he would be I'm not kidding when I said, like, I thought it was a reach to draft him at the spot that he was. I was like, yeah, he works really hard. He's had that progression. He's an older quarterback that lost his job. Like, I was a doubter. Like, if Jalen Hurts wants receipts, I was a doubter, and he has proved me wrong. And I've become a guy that's just like respects the work ethic that he has, even though he talks in Instagram captions. But I think that's just a funny bit. I mean, even Shea Gilgeous-Alexander does the same thing. But yeah, I was very, very wrong about Jalen Hurts. He's a great quarterback. I think I even overrated him last year, putting him in the top 5. And now I think he is kind of mellowed out into that 5 to 10 range. And he got paid, which was a sign that the dude was like, even if you think it was an overpay, the dude played well enough to where there's still a portion of people out there that are like, yeah, pay the guy. You got him to a Super Bowl and had one of the best Super Bowl performances. The dude proved me wrong. And I know my friends are going to love this one. Reasons why I would not be a good NFL GM. CJ Stroud. It's only been 1 year, and I know people are going to be very happy that I am saying this because I was very wrong on CJ Stroud. Even though I still gave him a comp that I felt was very viable, that I thought, honestly, peak of his powers, Kirk Cousins was going to be his comparison. A guy that was super accurate in the pocket, could move a little bit when he needed to, because I think Kirk has grown in that area, but doesn't handle pressure that well. Good enough arm and really great touch. I shorted what I thought he could be, apparently. CJ Stroud's really damn good. He's right there with Herbert, 1A, 1B to me. Not best in the league, but between them two, flip a coin. One day I feel it's Herbert, one day it's Stroud. The dude was incredible. And as someone who is from the Houston area, I know what that Texans organization was. Yes, you bring in D'Amico Ryans. Yes, you bring in all this talent. But I know what that organization was. I know what the local fans say. I know what the local news reporters say. I know those thoughts and the stories you would hear about that organization. It shouldn't be understated what he was able to flip in a year. It's as impressive to me as what Joe Burrow has been able to do. And Joe Burrow, he was really able to flip the script in his second year. CJ came out bugging year one, and he didn't have a guy like Jamar Chase. Yeah, I like Nico Collins. My buddies told me about Tank Dell going into the draft, but I didn't think he could turn up like this. Let's not act like Dameon Pierce didn't also get benched for Devin Singletary, and now Devin Singletary is pretty good. But I think because of the people moving how they feel about these players after the season, they don't realize how crap of a situation it was before. People were roasting the Texans for coming back and getting Will Anderson and giving up that first-round pick because they thought that the Texans were still going to be bad enough where the Cardinals could potentially have 2 top 5 picks. And look how wrong they are now. I was wrong about CJ Stroud. I said that same thing about that Cardinals trade, and I could not be more wrong. Reasons why I would not be a good NFL GM. John Ross. Pretty simple. And it's why I might have a slight towards Xavier Worthy. It might be. Because I got burned that bad with John Ross. It was simple. I don't have a major explanation for this outside of the fact that he broke the 40 record. And I was like, yep, that dude's going to be great. You just got to throw it deep and he's going to get open. That was right when I was really starting to get into the NFL draft. So I don't really have a fair reason outside of the fact that I got combine bias whooping me. I thought John Ross was going to be great. And I still think about that one touchdown that he had for the Bengals where I think he juked someone out of his shoes. And I was like, yep, he's coming to fruition. Nope. People at his size rarely work out, and it's why I think I'm lower on Xavier Worthy. And that comparison in of itself, as I'm verbalizing it, might be an immaturity in my draft analysis. But then again, statistically, Xavier Worthy, wide receivers at his size, I think at best he's going to be like a wide receiver 2, maybe, but not like a high-end one. Reasons why I would be a bad NFL GM. Jared Goff. I didn't see the vision. I thought he was a Sean McVay merchant. As someone that's a Seahawks fan and watched them twice a year play my team, wasn't moving me. When he was injured and he beat Seattle at home, and I think it was Russ's last year, maybe second to last, I was a Jared Goff hater. I didn't see the vision. I just thought they saw a quarterback with a decent arm. I didn't think highly of that class, so there was nothing for me to say that I was like, Jared Goff, he's going to be a good quarterback. I thought he was going to be painfully mid. And the dude's a viable top 10 quarterback, top 12, depending if you're ranking Rodgers or things like that. But Jared Goff has revived his career. I thought he was below average. The dude's borderline great. I think he's above average, sometimes great. And that's proved me wrong. Last player. Reasons why I would be a bad NFL GM. Zach Martin. This was right when I was really paying attention to the NFL draft because of one man of Johnny Manziel, who we will talk about later. Yeah, I was just wrong. I thought the Cowboys should have drafted Johnny Manziel, and even Johnny Manziel himself said he's thankful that the Cowboys didn't draft him because of what it would have done to his life. But that made me a Zach Martin hater, and he has become like one of the best guards of our generation. I was just wrong. That was just me being petty, but I was just outright wrong. And that is why I would be a bad NFL GM. Pretty simple. I not putting too much stock into it. I could do players I was right about, but I think it's much more fun to admit my wrongs than try to be a victory lap podcast. Because that's not what we're about over here. We're 30 minutes into the show. Thank you so much if you've been watching up to this point. If you've just been turning this on, I'm going to try to get this on Spotify. We may actually, in the next couple shows, go to a recorded version. I'm not 100% sure. Maybe just to add some edits, make it a little bit more formatted. I'm not really sure. But with that being said, please leave a like, leave a sub. Thank you so much for watching up to this point. But we're going to keep pushing on to the Johnny Manziel topic. Johnny Manziel is boycotting the Heisman, and I'm all for it. There's not a lot of opinions to say about it outside just give Reggie his damn Heisman back. And what I hope to see, in all honesty, is that other players join him. I think when we're talking about a guy like Manziel, there's people that push back on it for whatever reason, and I think they missed the point because it's a polarizing player. He's been in the media over the past couple of days. He's been on a media campaign. He's even made like a joke about coming out of retirement, which I take very lightheartedly. But and that was someone that was like always itching for him to have that comeback season. It's not going to happen. But when we're talking about the Heisman itself and how they say that the NCAA needs to reinstitute his statistics in order for them to give him his Heisman back. I just think about the fact that the NCAA has become obsolete as Tennessee won that law case about how the NCAA can't enforce NIL-based sanctions because they changed the rules so much. And that, like I said, I've talked about that before in the last episode. The NCAA has just become so obsolete. At this point, what is the Heisman Committee waiting for? If you're going to wait for the NCAA to do the right thing, you're going to be waiting till the day you die. Outright. Like, that's just what is going to happen. You cannot wait for the NCAA to make the right decisions ever. And if Manziel boycotting the Heisman is at least going to kick off some people to join with him, I think it's going to work if he joins him. But all it takes is one person to take the step. And you can make the argument that Reggie Bush is the Heisman. I mean, the dude had the second highest first place votes right there with like guys like Joe Burrow, and he was a running back. Like, I don't have a lot to say on it outside just give the man his damn Heisman, and it's going to be the same opinion that everyone is reiterating. Let's also talk about, oh yeah, Combine happened, but I don't have a lot of takes about the Combine. And any takes I have about the Combine, I've already said. Let's talk about what, okay. We could do a couple things. Players that I expect to go higher in the NFL draft. These are the guys that I expect in the NFL draft to go higher than what they are projected right now, or what the fans perceive as very high, or whatever the fan consensus is. Obviously, you have JJ McCarthy. Get that out of the way. I do think it's almost too high at this point. I'm seeing top 5, top 6, like to the Giants. As someone that has said that he would be a top 10 quarterback, which by the way, I don't think he is a top 10 quarterback worthy talent, but I get like when I need to make it clear when I have caped for JJ McCarthy, it's been because people have said he's like a third round quarterback or he's going to go in the third round. Objectively, the NFL is going to be higher on him. Players I think are going to go higher. I think you could say Xavier Worthy just because the 40 time moves people. Even though I disagree with it, Worthy could easily shoot up to the first round. I think it was Henry Ruggs that went really, really high. Jalen Waddle went really, really high because of his speed. And the Waddle was a little bit different, but like obviously John Ross, a lot of these guys that are just speed guys, they end up going very high. Another player that I think could go higher than expected is Chop Robinson. He had a really good combine. I think people see the athletic tools. I think he could sneak into the first round. I could also see Michael Penix. As much as I'm against it, I think the medicals came out clean. Someone's going to fall in love with the fact that he was a winner during his time at Washington. They're going to fall in love with the deep ball, even though deep ball accuracy is more predicated on the wide receiver than I think people realize. But I could see a world where Michael Penix goes higher than projected. Another guy that I think will go higher than projected, probably Terrion Arnold. And then also, I would say Terrion Arnold goes higher. I think he's killing it in the interviews. And with Nate Wiggins falling because of his size, I think Nate Wiggins ends up falling, that he is going to be a lot higher than people expect. There's going to be a run of tackles. I think Amarius Mims is going to go higher than people realize. And I almost want to take away the JJ McCarthy thing just because I think he's gone too high. So I think I should even lump him into players I expect to go lower. But yeah, I don't have a lot of takes about the NFL draft. We'll get closer and I'll be able to dive in. Like I want to do a topic about offensive coordinators and their fits with certain players, and as we get closer and all that. And we'll do another mock draft very soon. Last topic for today. Arch Manning does not want to be in NCAA 25. And this brings a smile to my face. Oh, does it bring a smile to my face? Because I love that there's so many conflicting reports on why he doesn't want to be in the game. And as the first report came out and says he just wants to focus on football, and the jokes about how he doesn't realize that it's a video game, he just has to sign a paper, get $600 and a copy of a game that he can probably just give to his friends and move on with his day. Or like, God forbid, he has to post an Instagram picture saying I'm in the game, even though he's the backup quarterback. And then another report comes out saying he doesn't want to be in the game till he's the guy at Texas. Like, dude, you are drawing so much attention to yourself that you said you didn't want. I don't want to be there till I'm the guy. And yes, I'm being a hater of Texas. I'll always be a hater of Texas. And it just brings a joy to my heart that this man just continuously keeps trying. Like, you already have a target on your back. People already think you're a 3-star if you took away the Manning last name. I disagree with that, but people still say it, and it's funny. And then you create this target to be even bigger, because what if you just don't work out at Texas? What if you're not the guy at Texas? Like, there's a world where that happens. You're not guaranteed to come in and win a national title in the SEC with Texas. What if you're just not the guy? You are creating a bigger target on your back by not getting in this football game. Same could be said for the Maxwell Award and the Biletnikoff. All you have to do is post it. You're going to get a bunch of accounts saying Arch Manning's in the game. And the people saying he doesn't want to see the 71 overall is so funny. Like, I get it, it's a video game. It doesn't really matter. But, like, if it doesn't really matter, are you going to really be mad about $600 in a video game that you can give to your friends? I think it's less work to announce that you're in the game, move on with your day, than to have to answer all these questions because to not understate. I get it. It's a video game. It doesn't matter. But people are hyped about it. People are excited. Texas fans, I'm sure there's a bunch of them that are excited to play this game and then to try to win a national title with you as quarterback. It's not like you have to sit there and do face scans for hours and hours. It does not matter, but it's so stupid. It's so stupid. Well, we're gonna have a short episode today. I just wanted to get some shots up. We gotta get some shots up. Thank you so much for watching Rush the Field, episode number 6. Have a wonderful day. Leave some questions into the email, and I will see you next week, where I think we're gonna do a recorded episode. So have a wonderful time. Bye-bye.